We are very happy to do this conversation today with Petra Blaisse of the office Inside Outside in Amsterdam and Momoyo Kaijima of the office Atelier Bow Wow in Japan. And we're all like really far apart from each other. Vassilis is in Arles, Niels is in Zurich, I am in Rome. And we also noticed that like this current crisis, people experience it really differently. So we wanted to start to just kind of ask you what world you are in at the moment.
And Momoyo, so I think we would like to direct this first question to you, because last night we were kind of looking again at your books. One which I really admire, it's called Echo of Space. I brought it from the library, and it's really kind of quite a humorous method of looking or describing the experience of architecture. You kind of start how you did holidays in the jungle and how you think that the environment should always reflect the behaviorology, the form, how kind of the form of being should reflect the form of doing. And therefore, we're quite curious how you would kind of describe the echo of space today.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Now I'm in a house under Atelier Bow Wow. So it was designed by us around 2005. And that means already over 15 years we lived here. And I'm staying second floor. And also the right side is view to the our neighbors, and another side view to the neighbors or our gardens. And it's very and also I set up the second floor, so my desktop and workspace for this moment. And next to my desktop there is a kitchen, so that's why I can cook, but also I can work already. So it's also very nice. And recently I started to bake bread. It's also very interesting. So of course I cooked also rice a lot as a Japanese, but also recently I started to bake the bread. And then bread is also very difficult because yeast, they need to some certain temperature and percentage. It's also that they live in the oven or before and after. So that's why it's I'm not yet so reach good level. So, but I'm very motivated now. So, and then Yoshiharu recently post our bread on the Facebook, and today I received one friend who had already knowledge about for 20 years bread making.
Wow.
He brought us to his result. And I was so shocked. It's very beautiful and very soft.
I really understand why you do bread, because it's very physical. And I think what I miss, or what we miss now, is that you cannot be physical except the ones nearest to you that you live with, but for the rest. So making bread, you have to really work the dough and then put it away for a while, right? Wrap it in a cloth, humid cloth, temperature and time and thinking. It's very philosophical as well.
Yes.
It's also very physical, which is very important in this time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I started to understand why I started to make bread. But yes, it's very fun. Yeah, fun, and also a lot of knowledge, and also we can connect to the material and also taste result. So I think, this is also part of today's my life. And also now I'm in Japan, but also I teaching Zurich students and Japanese students. So that's why a bit strange. So I wake up early in the morning, but also I started to work a bit afternoon. So today. So that's why everything a bit doubling the time. So that, but it works. Yes.
And Petra, for you, it's gardening your bread.
Yes, cooking. I totally agree with Momoyo. It's really wonderful. We cook every day, and it's very difficult to go shopping because in Amsterdam it's still a bit open. We can go outside, and so my world at the moment is power walking in the Vondel Park early in the morning when it's not so busy. And it's very interesting because there's a big fine if you don't keep enough distance between one another. So there are joggers, there are people with dogs, there are people like me power walking, but we all have to avoid each other. And then there's the police car and the ambulance cars slowly driving through the park and through the streets, checking if you are okay and if you are according to regulations. So that's the outside world. And we sometimes meet friends on the sidewalk or in the park with a lot of distance. Very strange because we cook for each other and we put the food somewhere and then the other one has to pick it up. So, but it's very interesting choreography. It's like a theater play almost. And so the intimacy is not anymore touching each other or hugging, but it's really with words and expression. So you feel like a kind of mimicry artist, you know, symbolically exchanging, symbolically being near, although far away. So it's an interesting time in that sense. And gardening, yes, behind me we have a small city garden, and it's an enormous joy to, in between all these Zooms, Skypes, whatever kind of digital meetings, to go outside and enjoy the smell and the sun and the garden itself and working in it. Hearing the birds, because it's the time of the birds making nests and feeding their young. So it's very nice.
Beautiful.
Petra, during these times, we had to, of course, or kind of when we encountered the imprisonment at home, we had to think of your early landscape project for a state detention center in the Netherlands, where you kind of superimposed a really free, almost surreal, meandering path onto a really rigid, cross-element, generic prison.
Yeah.
And in the recent weeks, we were kind of reflecting on this topic of life versus prison. And we read one really great text by a French philosopher called Catherine Malabou, which is on the kind of the philosophical term of the prison. Mm-hmm. And she also brought one great quote, which says, "Captivity produces the fantasy of an outside, which says that authentic life is outside." And we thought it would be a great kind of start in the talk to show pictures of this early project of yours.
Yeah, it's from 1997. So it's a long time ago. And in Holland, there were many prisons being built in those years. And the state had decided that each prison had to be built by different architects, and the outside had to be designed by different landscape architects. So they asked me to do this prison, and at the time it was half for men and half for women, and it was a double cross. It's a double cross, so you have actually 6 exterior rooms, as it were. I went inside. Of course, it was being built. It was completely new. And everything inside is the same. The corridors, the cells, the central control booth, etc. So wherever you were, you had no idea where you were. So the whole idea is that each garden is so different that by looking out past the barriers, looking out, you could recognize where you were. So it's also a tool to find your way and to have different experiences looking out each time that you moved or walked in that building from one place to another. And I thought it was very important, this path, that it would indeed, a kind of a lyrical path symbolizing freedom. So the path ignores all boundaries and goes from one to the next, sometimes inside, sometimes even one time through the outside walls to the parking lot of the visitors and back in again. A bit cynical, I must say, but anyway, it was 1997. It's a long time ago. And so this path in one of the women's gardens has this spiral. So you can walk everywhere because you can walk anywhere you want. But if you follow the path, you have a certain philosophical and spatial experience of that place. And from different perspectives and different rhythms and speeds that you walk it. And then there's, of course, also plantings that change every season, which is very important to choose trees and plants that change so that you can recognize what season you are in. In imprisonment, very difficult, of course, to realize what's going on. And so inviting birds and inviting insects to come into the garden so that there is this experience. And you showed these mussels. So in each garden, there's a different finish. One is broken terracotta. This is the men's garden. It has these washed mussels. The women's garden with the spiral is white shells, washed and burned white shells. So they're different at each time. There's also a football field and a ball field. And in the women's gardens, there's also a children's playground because the women, unlike the men, were allowed to receive family or their children now and then. And they could even stay and sleep in a separate apartment. So the women were treated differently than the men. And I was very shocked, but also, of course, pleased, but shocked by it. But the director of the prison said, it is very, very obvious that women react differently to being imprisoned than men, because men don't want to realize their own responsibility for getting there, and they always want to break out. And the women accept a responsibility for being there, and they don't even try to break out. So the whole security system is different for the two. I thought, it's very generalizing, but obviously that's the case.
This is very interesting. And I wanted to ask you a question. Did you visit after the design was finished any of the space and discuss with any of the inmates about their experience of the space? How they kind of lived through this space, which was quite essential for them, I imagine, if they were spending most of the time in the prison, to have this kind of very unique outdoor space, even for a couple of hours every day or for less even. What was their experience?
Well, the thing is, one of the reasons there's not let's say, a vegetable garden or something more curing is that it's a prison where people are, for a very short time, awaiting their fate, awaiting the juridical, decisions about where they go afterwards. So in fact, this prison is very, very tense. The whole atmosphere is very tense because people arrive there and they are completely in shock. And so there's not a therapeutic garden in there, which of course in the first place I wanted to make, but that's not possible. And so also you never can meet prisoners who are there for a long time, and it's high security. So I visited, but I had to visit at a certain point in the day that there was no prisoner outside to take pictures of the garden 10 years after. So I went there 10 years later.
Wow.
And in fact, because we were working on a book on Inside Outside, And I went with the photographer Hans Werleman, and we had to really make for months, a specific slot to go in. And at a certain point, we were on the roof of the prison, and then the prisoners were allowed outside. And, they smoke and they talk and they do sports. But they saw us on the roof. And I was kind of waving to them, and they were going like this. But the people of the security people of the prison said it worked well and that they used it a lot. Mm-hmm. And what can I say? I couldn't interview the prisoners themselves, but it seemed to have worked very well.
It strikes me that how you can use like elements or also materiality in this case that is very like oppositional to what you would expect. Like here you used these muscles as a path in the prison. It's really the least expected to be there. And I wonder if it's with exhibitions, if there's a bridge, if this is the same, do you like approach exhibition also in these terms that you try to insert something that disrupts the situation?
Well, it could very well be. In this case, this plastic is so thin that it also moves. It has this tremor. If you move, the air flow makes it move. Of course, the transparency and the physicality, the pleats, the folds is very important here. But also that you see everything at the same time, but through fleeces. So it's very sensual in that sense. I don't know if I obviously consciously connect materiality, but I think materiality and forms of transparency and layering is very important in our work. The illusion of things, or the challenging of what's happening in a space. I'm sure you recognize that. Not always being obedient and softening, but also really challenging what you actually want to do there. And I think you, Fredi and Niels, already knew what you were going to exhibit there, yet the way we did it must also have triggered something in your way of exhibiting. So it's a kind of exchange.